Have you ever been in a situation, maybe at work or even on a school project, where you had a choice to make and you just felt, well, stuck? You're wondering, what is the right thing to do here? You know, figuring out how to make ethical decisions isn't just a nice little skill to have anymore. It's absolutely essential if you want to succeed. And that's exactly my promise to you right now. We're going to cut through all the complicated theories. By the time we're done here, you are going to have a powerful, super simple, 3-question test that you can use in any situation. Seriously, this is a tool that top executives rely on, and today it's all yours. So you're going to want to stick around, because the last part of this test might just change the way you think about your work.
All right, so before we jump into the test itself, we need to do something important. We've got to build a fence around this idea. I mean, what are we really talking about when we say ethics? It's a word that gets tossed around all the time, so let's get super clear on what it is, and just as importantly, what it isn't. Okay, at its heart, ethics is really just the standards of moral behavior that we, as a society, agree on as right versus wrong. Think of it as our shared code for what's good and what's fair. It's what guides us to act beyond just what's best for ourselves. And, you know, when that code gets broken, that's when you see those big, messy headlines about corporate scandals and a total loss of public trust. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, and this is a key distinction. A lot of people think, hey, if it's not illegal, it must be ethical. But that's not the full story, not even close. Obeying the law is just the starting line. It's the bare minimum. You know, it might be legal for a company to sell something they know isn't great, as long as it's buried in the tiny print. But is it ethical? See? Real ethical behavior happens in that huge space above what the law requires. So how do we find our way in that space? Well, here it is. This is the practical tool I promised you. Anytime you're facing one of those tough choices, you can run it through these 3 simple questions. Let's walk through them one by one. First up, the baseline check. Is it legal? This is your first hurdle. If the answer here is no, well, the conversation's over. But if it's yes, hold on. You're not off the hook yet. You've got to move on to the next question, which gets a little deeper. Second, is it balanced? In other words, would I be okay if I were on the receiving end of this decision? Am I being fair to everyone involved? This question is so powerful because it forces you to step out of your own shoes and see things from every angle. It's all about fairness, about empathy. And finally, number 3, the gut check. How will this make me feel about myself? This one's all about your own integrity. Will you be proud of this choice? Could you look your family in the eye and explain what you did without feeling a little bit of shame? Your conscience is an incredible guide. So let's just say it one more time. Is it legal? Is it balanced? And how will it make me feel? Okay, that's a great framework for us as individuals. But how does this work for a whole company? How do you go from one person making a good choice to an entire organization that just breathes integrity? Let's take a look at how companies can build an ethical culture from the top down. It's actually pretty simple. It all starts at the top. The real values of a company are just a mirror of its leadership. I mean, if the CEO gets caught lying or cutting corners, what kind of message does that send to every single employee? Trust me, their actions shout way louder than any fancy mission statement hanging on the wall. And this leadership choice leads to 2 totally different ways of doing things. On one side, you have compliance-based ethics. Think of this as the strict rule book, focused on don't do this and punishing people who break the rules. But on the other side, you have integrity-based ethics, which is so much more powerful. This is about defining a set of shared values, creating a culture where everyone feels responsible for doing the right thing. It's the difference between here's what you can't do and here's who we want to be. Now, it's one thing to hear the difference, but it's a whole other thing to actually live it and build that kind of mindset, especially when you're trying to learn all the core ideas of business at the same time. This is really where having the right tools can make your learning smarter, not just harder. You know, they say success starts with a single step, and the business Semat file is designed to be that very first step for you. It's not just another summary. It's a real guide that breaks down big ideas like this into pieces you can actually use, with things like checklists and exercises that help you build a really solid foundation. It helps these ideas finally click. So let's zoom out for a second. We've talked about individuals, we've talked about companies, but what about a company's responsibility to the whole world? This is where things get really fascinating and, yeah, a little complicated.
This brings us to a huge topic, corporate social responsibility, or CSR. It's this idea that a business should genuinely care about the well-being of the society it's part of. It's about shifting the goal from just making money to making a real positive impact. Now, when you see a list like this, with all these big terms, corporate philanthropy, social initiatives, it can look, well, a bit overwhelming. But don't worry, we can make this way simpler just by asking one question. Who is a company responsible to? Let's start with the most obvious one, customers. This actually goes way back to President Kennedy, who outlined 4 basic rights for consumers: the right to safety, the right to be informed, the right to choose, and the right to be heard. Today, that means everything from making sure your products are safe to being totally honest about how you handle customer data. Next up, investors. The main responsibility here is pretty clear. Be honest and transparent to protect their money. That means no insider trading, using secret company info for your own gain, and making sure that financial information is shared fairly with everyone, all at the same time. And what about the people who actually do the work? A company's responsibility to its employees is massive. It's about so much more than a paycheck. It's about creating a safe place to work, giving people real chances to grow, and just treating them with dignity and respect no matter who they are. And finally, let's talk about society and the planet. Some people used to argue that being environmentally and socially responsible was just an extra cost. But the modern view? It's a huge opportunity. Companies that do this well attract the best employees, build incredible customer loyalty, and they often end up performing better than their competitors. It's a win-win. Just look at this number. The move to a greener economy has already created over 9 million jobs in the US alone. That proves that what's good for the world can be amazing for business. So we've covered a ton of ground here, from your own personal 3-question ethics test all the way to a company's global responsibilities. You've got the information now. So the real question is, what are you going to do with it? Your journey to mastering business and to becoming a truly ethical leader is exactly that, a journey. And, every journey is just easier when you have the right tools. That business Semat file we talked about is designed to be your guide on that path. You can find the link to check it out right there in the description below. And I just want to leave you with one final thought. Forget about trying to solve all the world's problems overnight. Think smaller. Think personal. What is just one ethical action that you can champion this week? In your job, in your studies, wherever. Because that's where it all starts.